Welcome back to the IU427 garage, everybody. We're working on the coupe today. We're going to continue working on that fuse panel. We're going to get some brackets made to get it more secure, and then we're going to blow it all back apart so that we can get those pieces powder coated. And I'm going to try to round up all the other pieces, or a good majority of the pieces that we need to take to the powder coater. I'm also thinking about mocking up the front nose aluminum so that I can get those pieces to the powder coater as well. So come right back and we'll jump in and we'll start fabricating parts. The way I thought I was going to do the brackets has changed a little. And it's just a simple matter of making this as easy as possible and secure. But what I had initially intended on doing was I was going to take this side of the fuse box and I was going to make a bracket that went back here to this 2-inch cross tube. I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to come from the panel here right up to this tube here. And it's going to make it a much shorter bracket. It's going to keep anything out of this area here so that if we end up having to run any wires through this area, it'll just clean things up. The one on this side I think is going to remain the same. So basically I'm going to go down to the bracket for the fuse panel down in this corner, and then I'm going to come up here and support it that way. So it'll come down at an angle like this. And I think in the long run, it's just gonna make things easier there, because the one cross brace that's coming down closest to the steering shaft is actually gonna allow the main harness to go on top of it, and then on top of the steering shaft, but below the 2-inch cross member. That might even be an 1.5 inch cross member, but it's going to keep everything nice and contained up in that area. So I'm going to work on that, and I think what I'm going to also do is I'm going to drag down the pieces for the nose aluminum, and I'm going to mock those all in place so that I can get these panels up here out to powder coat. I'm also going to get the battery tray ready to go to powder coat as well. You can kind of see what I was talking about now. That stainless steel brake line was run right across the area where the battery tray is shown that it needs to go in the assembly manual. And so I'm still kind of contemplating what I'm going to do. I might be able to just take that brake line and swing it forward, but I don't know. I just don't know. You know, if there was a reason behind it, I wish I knew what it was, but not knowing, I'd just as soon put it where it's supposed to be rather than, you know, making like standoff brackets and everything else. Because if I make standoff brackets, then I'm adding pieces that, you know, could eventually work loose and rattle around, and I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on that. So I'm going to see what I can do about just moving the brake line a little bit forward, and then that way the battery tray will mount right on top of that 1.5 inch cross member that's there and be secure. But we'll see what happens. But I'm going to try to get to that too. I don't know. I just don't know right now. So I'm going to go upstairs and I'm going to grab those pieces for the nose aluminum. And then I'm going to jump on making those brackets for the fuse box, and I'll bring you back as soon as I've got some progress to show on either one, but I think I'm going to work on the fuse box first. All right, so let me get this out of the way so you can kind of see this one here. So you can see I used 2 pop rivets. Well, it's going to be pop rivets. I'm going to put 3/16 pop rivets in here. I've just got 1/8" Clecos in there for the time being, but this goes directly into this. I think it's 1.5 inches, maybe it's 1.25 inches square tube, just below the dash. And it's good and secure in there. I mean, it's not going anywhere. And then down inside there, down in here, I don't know if you can see, I've got a single Cleco in holding that, and that'll get one of those black trim screws. So that's the far side, and like I said, it's in there just rock solid. The other side, try to get all this stuff out of the way, is right here, and you can see I've got, again, 2 Clecos holding it in. Those will become 3/16 pop rivets, and then I've got a single Cleco in from the bottom right here. And so, like I said, you can't even move this thing. It's in there nice and tight. And then I went ahead, I rounded all the corners on my aluminum brackets. Once they're powder coated, they'll be nice and you know, good looking. Granted, all this gets hidden, but one thing that I've learned in the construction field for 35 some odd years is that everybody notices the pretty part, but they don't realize what it took to get to that point. And all of this stuff behind the dash, under the car, in the tunnel, and all those areas that you don't see is actually the most important stuff of all, because without that foundation, nothing else can be built upon it. Meaning, you can put pretty paint on the outside of the car, but what if the doors don't close, what's the point, you know? So spending a little bit of time fabricating these brackets, actually it wasn't a little bit of time, it took me all afternoon. It's 5:45 right now, and I think I told you I started at 2:45. So 3 hours to fabricate 2 brackets, but it was back and forth to the saw, the brake, drill, press, all that kind of stuff, and it all adds up. So what I'm telling you is take your time in this portion of the build, because if you just power through this as fast as you can and just kind of temporarily put stuff in place, are you going to remember to go back and do it right the second time you do it? To me, it's just better to take your time, make it all right the first time, and then as you layer things upon that, it's just going to make a better product in the end. I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, it's next day, everybody. I am working on the nose aluminum, and last night I posted a picture on social media, and this morning I had a comment from Mike Everson. And Mike's built a lot of Cobras, and he's built a lot of Daytona Coupes, and he basically told me, hey, you need to trim this one area of the aluminum so that you'll have enough room for your air conditioning condenser and your hoses and your radiator and all this stuff. And so I talked to Mike this afternoon, and he told me exactly where I need to trim and cut, and we're gonna go ahead and do that. But first, what I'm gonna do is I'm probably gonna get all of this stuff in place, get it all Clecoed in place, and then I'll trim those areas and then fit it all back in for a final time before we send these panels off to powder coat. So this is what we're kind of starting with. It's been so long since I did a coupe that I couldn't remember how many pieces it was in total. So you've got the main piece here that creates the back of, they call it the radiator tunnel. And then you've got this piece along here. And in the instructions, I'm going to show you the page in the manual. It doesn't show that as a separate piece, but it is indeed a separate piece. And then we've got the 2 side pieces. And we've got a huge gap right here. I don't know if you guys can see this right here in between the panel and the frame. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to center that in between the 2 sides before I fit that piece in. And then I'm going to build off of that. But the piece that Mike was talking about is basically all this aluminum right here that I've got the X's on. So basically, we're gonna cut this whole area out, and that's gonna give us better access to the radiator and to the air conditioning condenser when that all goes in place. So I'm gonna be working on that probably the rest of this evening, and I'll bring you guys back tomorrow and show you what it looks like and kind of how far I got. All right, it is almost 3 weeks later. As I was finishing up work on the fuse box and just starting to lay out the nose aluminum, we left for our trip. And we've since gotten back from Oklahoma. We've been home about 2 or 3 days. I've been working on the coupe, but I haven't been picking up the camera because it's just been a madhouse around here trying to get unpacked and kind of collect ourselves from the trip. But some things have happened since we've gotten back. I got a visit from the owner, and he dropped off some parts. He dropped off the headers for the engine. And then we've had some deliveries. So we've got the header gaskets and some stage 8 locking hardware for the headers as well that arrived just before we left for our trip. So the fuse box fabrication for the brackets is all done. You saw that. The nose aluminum is in. I fit all that first. And then what I went ahead and did was much as I described, I made this panel fit first. So I made sure that we spaced it evenly between the two sides. I got it laid out, I pulled it back out, I pre-drilled all the holes for the now clecos, which will become rivets. I know this seems excessive, but I just want this piece to be secure. And then after the main piece was in, then I went and I fit the top piece. So I had pre-drilled all the holes on the top. I slid that piece in where I wanted it and then drilled through that panel so that the pop rivets will go all the way through both panels and into the structure behind them. Then I laid out for the sides, and as I stated in the video earlier, we wanted to relieve this area here for any air conditioning hoses, for the condensing unit that's going to go on the front of the radiator and stuff like that. So both sides have been cut out so that they match one another and they give access to both the side of the radiator and whatever else might be in front of the radiator. So that's all in. And then what I did is I went ahead and laid out for all of the clecos, soon to be pop rivets, on each side for those panels. So those are all in. Now this will all come back off, and we'll get it ready to go to the powder coater. And I have a couple other panels that are going to go in at the same time, along with those brackets that we did for the fuse box. Now when the owner was out here, I need to stay off of the forum, I think, because I saw that one of the build threads, it looks like a guy fabricated panels for the top of these tubes right here, and I thought it looked really cool. So I mentioned it to the owner, and he seems up for it. But as I started to think about it, you know, the tires are right here, and even though you're going to have some splash shields here, my only worry is if we only cover the top, what's going to happen is that debris, you know, water, dirt, dust is going to accumulate underneath here on the bottom side of that panel, and it's going to become an issue where we're going to be having to figure out how to clean that. Now I could, you know, cover the bottom as well, but over here we have the hoses for the brake and clutch master cylinders. We've got those reservoirs right there. I don't know that that's a really good idea, so I'm still mulling that over right now. If we decide that we're going to do that, I can always fabricate those pieces later and then send them into powder coat, because I'm sure we'll have a few straggling pieces that need to go to powder coat. So I really don't think it's a huge issue if we have to take a couple of panels in at the end. These are pretty big panels too, so that helps. If they were just tiny little, you know, pieces that we were taking in by themselves, we'd get charged a fortune. So I'm not too worried about bigger panels because my powder coater is usually pretty fair about that stuff. But I went ahead and pulled down the rest of the panels for the car too, just to kind of get an idea of what else is going to need to be powder coated before, you know, this car gets final assembled. And I'm going through those now, and I'm kind of figuring out what's going to stay silver, what's going to, you know, go in color. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this video here, and then we'll pick up, hopefully, in the next video with us bolting the clutch to the back of the engine on the flywheel and fitting the bell housing and the transmission, so that we can eventually drop the engine into the car, because now that we've got all the nose aluminum pre-fit, it can all be pulled off and go to the powder coater. So if you guys are enjoying the content here, as always, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.